Welcome to the Q Podcast.
Q is about conversation.
If we're really concerned about ending poverty, we've got to be more concerned about creating justice.
Our cultural products as Christians need to both defy and resonate with the culture.
And God's doing amazing things. His church is expanding. His church is growing.
It's not what's the purpose of my life, it's what is the purpose that's been assigned.
Stay curious, think well, advance good. This is Q.
Welcome to another edition of the Q Podcast. I'm Gabe Lyons, and today we're going to have a great conversation with one of my favorite artists, Dana Tanamachi. And I'm not talking music artist, I'm not talking dance artist, I'm talking artist, using their paintbrush, using their hands, using the tip of a pencil or calligraphy pen to start to create beauty and to create art. And Dana's one of those people who just has an incredibly amazing story. If you're listening today, this is one of those you're going to want to send to your friends. You're going to want to send it to those that you get inspired by and inspire them with this, because her story is one of amazing journey of God sort of using her talent to start to create culture-wide trends that now you see everywhere. No matter where you go, you're seeing her art. You're seeing art that's now kind of trickled down, the trickle-down effect of great art and design and branding that's starting to show up everywhere. But she decided to start to apply her talent on this latest project over the last year to something pretty amazing. And I can't wait for you to hear her story and tell us how she decided to go spend a year of her time putting art into scripture and thinking about the Bible in a completely new way. And it is just beautiful what she's created. So we're going to just jump in. You're going to listen to her story. And then at the end of this, I'll tell you more about where you can find more about the project she's done, her art, so that you can start to follow her. She's somebody who's given a Q talk. You can go search her at qideas.org under Dana Tanamachi, where she did a great talk at our Boston event about 3 years ago on creating and flourishing and all about her journey and her story. So let's listen in. You can hear a little bit of that here now and talk about some of her latest art, her latest projects, how she thinks, how she creates with her hands and stays off of digital technology, all the good stuff that you and I need to hear more of. So let's listen in. Dana, it is so great to get to spend a little bit of time with you, and for so many of our listeners to really get to meet you. I know many of them have seen the talk you gave back at our Q conference a few years back of your story. And so it's going to be fun to just catch up on where you're at today, what kinds of projects and things have been evolving since that last time. But just for them to get to know you and to start to follow you. You're one of the most inspiring people I know. And so I'm excited for so many people to come to know you just a little bit better today. And our history goes back many, many years to when we both lived in New York City. And that's where we first met and became friends. And your journey really began then on the art side of things, not in your life, but career-wise, like some things started to take off. And for those who haven't heard your story, would you mind just catching us up a little bit on that journey of how you came to recognize the gifts that God had given you in the sense of your artistic ability and your passion for that kind of thing? And then we'll kind of move forward in your story a little bit to today, but I'd love for people to just catch up a little bit on where this all came from.
Yeah, sure. It's fun to kind of think back at that time, right? I guess I moved to New York City in 2007. I had just graduated from college with a degree in graphic design. So, I was making friends, had my first job, a lot of transition. I think it was about 2009. I was invited by some new friends from Trinity Grace Church in Brooklyn to a housewarming party. And I remember, I guess that's where there was sort of a big change and a light bulb went off. But a friend had encouraged me to draw on one of the walls that was painted with chalkboard paint. And I had never even seen that kind of thing before. This was, very much pre-Pinterest. And so I remember drawing the word Brooklyn there, and my friends were like, "Oh, that's so cool. Like it's like really vintage. And will you take my picture in front of it?" And I thought, yeah, I mean, sure. I didn't think it was that great, but it kind of turned into a photo wall for that party. And then from then on, we had about 3 more parties that year. And I would come over beforehand and draw the art for whatever theme that party was going to be. And everyone would go home and upload their photos to Facebook, and it just kind of became our thing. It was really fun. It was really organic and
Yeah.
natural, and I loved seeing people, celebrate and
Right.
enjoy themselves with my work
And what
as the
was
background, right?
what was fun about that, I know, is you love community. Like that's just something that's been a big part of your life, and you love these parties. And what a lot of people may not realize, I mean, over the last many, many years now, from that moment, there was a beginning of people starting to follow your art, starting to see what you were doing with chalk, and then this whole chalk art movement just takes off,
Right. I
and
know.
culture wide, nationwide, worldwide. And I know you don't, but you don't like to talk about it in this sense because you were just kind of being creative and doing what you had in your eye to do. And yet
Yeah.
it literally has shaped the way art is showing up, the way people think about lettering, quotes,
Mm.
like, and now today there's such a variety of ways of people doing it, but the whole idea of hand lettering something was at that moment that wasn't something people were doing. And it's been
Yeah.
amazing to just see how almost a cultural trend can start to turn into something that lasts far beyond being a fad to a trend to now almost like mainstay.
I know it's super weird to think about. I know that, there were people obviously before me. It was just right time, like I said, there are people around that time who are also doing lettering and kind of bringing it into the mainstream. But it was amazing to watch and something that I never expected. I was just doing something that I really enjoyed and that I loved, and I could work with my hands, and it was very therapeutic. And again, it was fun, kind of providing that
Yeah.
as a
And
gift for my community.
then you went on, and I mean, several, I mean, major Fortune 100 companies start calling you. I know you did
Right.
Oprah, you did the O magazine cover, Time, I think. I mean, just so many different places your art then starts to show up around the world. And what I
Yeah.
loved about that is just how grounded you are through that process. That none of that was going to your head. You weren't like thinking you had arrived or anything. You were just kind of doing your art and continuing to
Mm.
practice this. And that's what I love about your story. And I think those listening will appreciate is that you've just always enjoyed working with your hands,
Yeah.
creating. And in our culture today, I'm just curious, like as you sort of observe what's happening culture wide. I mean, if you look at the last decade since that began for you, there's also been a major shift happening of more consuming taking place by people, a lot more digital, less tactile experiences. We've seen an increase in mental health, anxiety, so many things happening. And the more I read and am understanding it, like part of the challenge is we as human beings were meant to create. We were meant to use our hands. We were meant to imagine and to design and to do
Mm.
things with our hands physically, embody it, not just in our mind, but with our bodies. And it strikes me
Yes.
that that's what you've committed so much of your time to over the last decade. And I know you
Sure.
have, Instagram and people can follow you and you have that digital side, but you've also maintained a lot of energy and effort. Like, would you credit the fact that you've spent so much time working with your hands? Has that helped you in some ways? Does it feel like you've stayed more sane as a result of that? And what would you say to listeners who maybe don't have, maybe they'd say, look, I'm not an artist or I don't have those hobbies in my life. Would you encourage us that we must have these kind of habits in our life because of what they can cultivate in our soul?
Absolutely. You mentioned mental health, and I think that there is such a strong connection between working with your hands or doing something creative, or even, say, physical activity with our well being. And I think that that's really true for me. My sweet spot is, being alone in my studio, getting to sketch things, or right now I'm working on I'm always working on personal projects. And I think that that's been the constant throughout this whole time. So even if I'm on the computer a lot, or yeah, we've always got our phones in front of us. I feel like I'm always trying to reconnect with, yeah, the physical, like the tactile,
Hmm.
because I found that that's what inspires the other work. I feel
Hmm.
like it's out of those seasons where I am building things with my hands, or cutting things, or drawing, that my greatest ideas, come from. And
Yeah, I love
I
that.
would absolutely encourage people. And like you said, not everyone is an artist, and so that's why I kind of mentioned the physical activity part, whether that's yoga or
Hmm.
taking a walk. All these things kind of are, I think, used as resets for our brains. We can get very focused on on the, say, digital world,
Mm-hmm.
or things that don't always matter that much,
Yeah.
whether it's social media. And usually when I'm working on really big projects, I tend to not be on those um,
Those
social
mediums.
networks, not
Yeah.
because I don't love them. Right. I enjoy them. I think they're really fun, and they have, they have their purpose, but they do serve as a distraction to me sometimes.
Right.
Um, and it's really hitting that reset button for me, and taking a walk, being active, going running, buying some supplies. I mean, I have so many art supplies in my studio, but I'm always open for more. So I'm always wanting something to tinker with or to work with.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reading a couple of years ago, Thomas Jefferson. There's a great biography by John Meacham about his life. And one of the insights that I received from that was when he was traveling. This was back, 300 years ago, and he was traveling
Mm.
over in France, and he had to be there for an extended period of time as our Secretary of State at the time. And his daughter was still here in Virginia, and he was instructing the lady who was going to oversee his daughter's education, because his wife had died, on how to spend her time during the day. And so you look back and you literally get to see, here's how Thomas Jefferson would have instructed a child to spend their time. And it was like the first 2 hours of the day was spent maybe on reading, and then it was like a couple hours on dance, and that was like every
Wow.
other day. But on the days you're not dancing, I want you to be drawing.
Hmm.
And it was almost like a daily exercise for his daughter to draw. Then it was read
Wow.
French, and then it was read, literature, and it was a full day of just like learning and stimulating the mind, but it included these tactile things. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the opportunities we have. And I don't know that Dana, you and I have ever talked about this, but one of my little hobbies I've had since I was a kid was I love to sketch. Like I love doing landscape sketching. Like if
Oh, yeah.
Rebecca and I are family or somewhere, whether it's a beach or mountains or anything like that, one of the practices
Oh, I
I
love
try to
that.
always do is sketch, the picture. And it's not that great, but it's like fun for me, and it's
Right.
therapeutic, and it's
Yeah.
it's something I just love, and it slows you down. And so I can just imagine what your life's like, that every day you have these little personal projects. And I think for our listeners, what a great takeaway to go, we all need personal projects. Like let's get back to that and think of ourselves as creators, as artists, as people who can work with our hands, even if you don't think it's that great and you're not creating it for somebody else
Yeah.
necessarily or to sell. You're creating it because it's God's made us to create, and we come alive as human beings when we're doing that. Even if it's working in a garden, right? Or
So
cultivating, just
true.
doing
Yes.
something. Well, your career has just continued on. I've been following you so closely, and it's just been so fun to watch the kinds of projects. I was saying earlier, you've gotten to do projects at the highest levels of art, the highest levels of business, of fashion, of all those eyes on you. And then came along a project about 2 years ago that you were up for considering. And I remember us having a conversation at the time where you
Uh,
were really thinking about this project because you knew what it was going to take. And I was so like excited, kind of waiting with you to see what were you going to decide to do, because a publisher approached you and said, we would like to see your art and your talent used throughout scriptures, used throughout the Bible. And yet you knew at the time, if I commit to this kind of a project, this is going to take me offline for quite a while. This is going to be
yeah.
bigger than anything I could ever imagine in terms of the work effort and what would go into it. And so tell us what you decided to do, and tell us a little bit more about what this project, 2 years ago, how was this painted to you as something that you should work on?
Sure. Well, believe it or not, it was only a year ago, not two
Was it only a
years
year
ago,
ago?
which yeah, it tells you how, we've jam packed this project into basically the first 7 months of this year. So it's crazy, but I do remember getting connected with the team at Crossway and talking to Josh Dennis, the creative director. And he said, I have this crazy idea. We want to do kind of a modern take on an illuminated Bible. And we think that your style would be perfect for it. And, this is what it would entail. It's over 500 illustrations. There's a full page book opener illustration for every, so there's 66, full page book openers. There's hundreds of margin verses. We want to do it in metallic gold. We want it to be, an art journaling kind of edition as well. That's become something that people are wanting and enjoying and engaging with. And he said, well, actually, they sent me some samples of things, and ideas that they had. But what I loved is he said, we want to do something that is beautiful, but that it is reverent. And I remember when he said that, I was like, that's the key. Like, that's the key word for me. That's what I want to hear because, I am a perfectionist. I am a textbook Enneagram 1, like
Hmm.
if I do it, I really want to do it well. And I want it to be, feel weighty and feel serious.
Yes.
And but I was like, but how do we do that in this amount of time? So I think that was the challenge, was saying, is this doable? I want to do it at the level, at a very high level. And so did they. So, we were always on the same page there. But in terms of such a big project like this, like we talked about, I'd kind of been going lightning speed for like 7+ years, traveling and doing, um, installations and just a lot. And since I've known you, I think, and while it was really exciting jumping from project to project and, making work that I was really proud of, I think what was most maybe appealing and also terrifying about the Illuminated Bible was taking 7 months, out of my life and dedicating it to just one
Right.
project. And I think sometimes as like a creative person, it can feel like you're only as relevant as the last thing you produced. It feels like that sometimes with Instagram culture. We see it and then we forget about it. And that's a temptation for me. It's a struggle for sure. And I felt like this project might be my chance to kind of push back on that idea in my own life. So yeah, I did take a break from
Huh.
social media and I didn't really show anything this whole year. And I wanted to see what the result would be. So yeah, I stayed home. I worked diligently and day in, day out on this project, and it's amazing to have it, in my hands at this point.
And I can just say, Dana, when I got this in my hand, I'm flipping through it right now. I mean, it
Ah,
is gorgeous.
thank
I
you.
was so blown away by it. I couldn't believe that. I mean, you talk about 7 months as a lot of time to commit to a project, but when you see the fruit of what was created in 7 months, it's hard to believe that was even
Yeah.
possible and that you got one night of sleep. I mean, it's phenomenal, and the way it's printed, I mean, I can just imagine the conversations you had to have with the publisher to say,
Yeah.
"If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it right, and the print
Yeah.
is gonna be gold metallic, and the
Hmm.
binding of the book and the way that we do it is just gonna be beautiful," and it's so
Yeah.
beautiful. One of the decisions Rebecca and I just made is we bought 50 of these and sent them to like 50 of our friends all over the
Wow.
country and the world, who we just said, look, this Bible's a beautiful piece. This is like a beautiful piece of art that I want you during the Christmas season to set it on a table and to just see who goes to it, who picks it up, who starts flipping through and starts reading. Because, there was that moment culturally where everybody had a family Bible, that would kind of sit,
Right.
in America at least, it would sit out, and a lot of people wouldn't open it or use it, but they'd kind of record the deaths and the weddings and those kinds of things in it. But it was
Yeah.
such a beautiful piece that you wanted it sitting out. It was like a beautiful piece of art. And I said, I don't think I've seen something like that in years, and something this beautiful, except when I look back historically at some of the manuscripts and the way they would create this art, which I know is part of your inspiration here. I just
Yes.
looked at it and said, "Man, this is great," and I'm so glad the publisher, and I don't know a lot of people at Crossway, but I can just say the fact that they spent the money they spent to create
Mm.
everything the way that they did, so that the medium communicates what this message is and the importance of it and the weight and the gravitas of it, and your
Yeah.
work art directing that. I mean, just so proud of you and excited that this is here
Thank
and here to stay. So great job.
thank you. I do have to say that I was assisted by an amazing team of about 5 lettering artists, some local and some not. There was just no way we were going to get through this
Yeah.
all in 7 months. So I do want to put that out there and thank them so much for their talents. And, it was fun working together. Really, a lot of assistance on the margin versus as I was focusing on the book opener illustrations, but it was a
Mhm.
fun, team
And that's the thing. I
collaboration for
mean, if
sure.
people could look at this right now, they'd see, when you get to Psalms, for example,
Mhm.
every book has a full page, beautiful illustration in gold. And so there's a deer, down at a brook, kind of like a deer panteth after the water. I mean, and you can just see how you were inspired and had to dig into each book to do that. Tell us a little bit from your understanding of illuminated Bibles, because I know that's what this is called, is the illuminated Bible. But the idea of illumination, because I've seen it as I've walked through some of the old museums and the places that are holding some of the oldest Bibles, and as they
Yeah.
were being printed, and you could just see there was so much time and energy put into art, which for most Bibles today, people are flipping through and there's not art. There's just
No.
words, and it's just there's no space, there's no margin. It's just crammed as much as they can on a page.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about how that inspired you.
Well, yeah, the majority, I think, of illuminated Bibles were, being produced in the medieval period, some in the Renaissance. These were just highly, highly decorated and ornamental books that used, yeah, gold leaf and bright colors, very dense. Like you said, you've seen them in museums. I think we've both now been to the Museum of the Bible, and that's one that exhibit of all the illuminated text that they have there was incredible for me to walk in, around, and I was like, oh yeah, this would have been so helpful like a year ago. But when I think of them, they're these sacred, beautiful historical objects. They're usually behind glass somewhere, and they're not for the public's use. I've never gotten to touch one or anything like that, and so I think what Crossway wanted to do, and what I wanted to do with the Illuminated Bible, was to create something similar, but for the modern eye, and something that people could actually engage with and hold in their hands and be inspired by the art. And you're right, most of our Bibles, some of them may have larger margins, so there's at least a little bit of visual negative space in there. But otherwise, you're right, it's just blocks and blocks of text, which can be sometimes hard to process. And I think for me, I'm definitely a visual learner. So the idea of having art paired with the scripture was something that was incredibly interesting to me. And that I felt could benefit a lot of people, including myself. That these verses could be kind of used as, like, I say, like little speed bumps. We were breezing through, and we just need something to help us slow down a little bit. And also, visuals definitely help me remember things. If I see a verse on the page, I can correlate it with, what I'm reading, and kind of retain it all.
Yeah, I think, that's the beauty of this is we're wanting people to slow down. We want people to read. We want people to take more time, right, for reflection. And so anyway, it's just an incredible thing. It's an incredible project. I hope people listening can just go and look this up, the Illuminated Bible, and check it out. You can see as well on there's a video as well in some places where Dana's actually talking about the art and what went into it and how they were thinking through it and all of this. It's just really great. So I'd encourage people to do that. And then also watch the talk that Dana gave a few years back where she talks about her calling, and it's called Creating and Flourishing, I believe. And in that particular talk, she tells her whole story prior to this project that we're talking about today, but of just her own journey, which has been so inspiring for so many people, Dana, to just hear how you've tried to think about your calling and not just get caught up in trying to pursue success or pursue where the world might be saying, "Hey, this is great. Will you just keep doing that forever?" And you're saying, "No, as an artist." I mean, maybe I'll let you put it in your words, but instead of doing that, you sort of have a different way of thinking about how you want to continue to cultivate. Maybe we'll just close with this, but what is that mentality that you have that doesn't let you just kind of sit on one particular style as an artist or a designer? And maybe you could even share with us some of the personal projects you have going on. I don't know if you'd be willing to do that, but I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I do feel like I have tried to remain, grounded through the ups and the downs of the last several years, and through the chalk lettering, um, era, I always knew that wasn't going to be, where I ended up. I remember people started to ask me, "Oh, did you get a degree in chalk art?" And I thought, "Is that a thing?" And I thought, "Man, when did I become, just a chalk artist?" I was like, I feel like I've got a lot more inside of me. I feel like I've got a lot there that people haven't seen and that I haven't seen and I haven't explored. And I think it's been that desire to unearth those things that has kept me going. Sure, I guess I could have kept doing chalk forever and retired but I never meant to fall into that. I felt like that was, like I said, it was just the right place, the right time. I felt like the steward of that particular medium in that particular time. But I think that's why I held it with an open hand as it became more popular and I started to see it,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of places. I just thought, well, it didn't really feel like mine. It felt like a gift. And, you know, all good things come to an end and there are new things on the horizon. And I'm just thankful that I didn't have fear, surrounding that. Like I had to grip, around it, that I could let it go when it was time. And like I said, I've created my most inspired work and my favorite pieces when I come out of seasons of just practicing or, working with my hands or creating side projects. Right now, I just went to the woodworking store last week and I got a lot of sheets of this kind of balsa wood. And I want to move actually into maybe the fine art world in the next year or two. I've been talking with my manager and we've been casting a vision for what excites me. And I want to start building some things and there's still the design, the kind of graphic element to it. But I have some kind of out there ideas and I want to start practicing in my own time because usually the way it works is once you do something that you're passionate about or, that I've been fine tuning and then I say, there's a company that contacts me and I could say, "Hey, this is what I've been working on. What do you think?" And they're, sometimes they're like, "Oh, that's nice. No, thanks." But then, there might be that one company that comes along and says, "Actually, that's really cool. We could go in this direction or, combine these two ideas." And then all of a sudden, you get to work on something new and something that you wanted to. So for me, that's kind of what I'm working on. It's a little vague right now, but it's still
That's
a work in
awesome.
progress.
Yeah, but you're still pushing yourself. You're still really trying to press into the next level of your own talent, growth, learning. And I just love that. I love that you're so committed to cultivating your own creativity and your soul. And we just love you and appreciate you and are proud of you and excited to share with others about your great work and also just about you, who you are. So thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dana. She's just a delight. She's so humble, right? I mean, you can just hear it in her voice. She actually doesn't do a lot of podcasts. So she told me before she did this, she goes, I don't enjoy doing these kinds of interviews. So because we're friends, because we've known each other a long time, I'm going to do it. But normally I don't do this sort of thing. So it's kind of a treasure to get her talking, to get a little bit inside of her head, how she thinks. And I'm encouraged, I'm inspired. One of the things I'm trying to do, I'm talking to our children about it as well, is to really get into a mode where we say, let's create. Let's make sure every day we don't just sit back and consume, but that we create and cultivate something, because that's what builds who we are. It's part of how our soul comes alive. I think God's designed all of us to do it. You heard it in her own life, how she has these personal projects. What a cool idea to think of a personal project, something that you're going to create. Maybe it's over the next week. We're coming into the holiday season, Christmas, New Year's. What a great time to kind of say, look, over the next year, I'm going to commit to once a month having some project. Or maybe for the next year, I'm going to have one project. And I'm just going to keep working on it. And I'm going to keep my supplies out. And I'm going to keep doing something with my hands. Or I'm going to do it in the garden. Or I'm going to build something outside. But I'm going to use my hands and I'm going to be in touch with my humanity and the physicality of how I've been made. So I'd encourage you to do that. And also, I want you to look into this Bible. I'm serious. This Bible, buy one for yourself. It's a perfect gift to give to somebody, whether it's for a birthday, a graduation, even for Christmas. You can still get this in time. If you're listening to this the day we put it out, you can still get it. But it's an incredible gift. They have multiple colors you can choose from. My favorite's the navy one. The navy hardback cloth cover Bible comes in a box. It's beautiful, but they also have a leather edition. They have another one that has kind of a green edition. I mean, it's just all of them are great. Check it out and go to illuminatedbible.org. When you go to illuminatedbible.org, you'll see the video I was talking about where Dana tells her story. You can also see a lot of the sketches that are part of this project. It's an extensive website as well. This Bible is going to be one of those that, like I said, it's going to be around for a long time, and make it part of your family. Just make it one of those that's going to be on your shelf, easily accessible for people to look through, be inspired by. This is the kind of items when we talk about creating culture and new forms of culture that kind of allow people to see a tangible expression of how the gospel shows up in life. I think of something beautiful like this that says, look, this text is worthy of something beautiful. And so we're going to create art around it. You can also follow Dana if you want to just hear more of her story, and let's follow the project she's working on over the next year. She starts to venture into fine art. But you can follow her at Dana Tanamachi, and there's a little underscore after Dana. So Dana underscore Tanamachi on Instagram. Well, it's been great having another conversation. I hope you're learning. I hope you're inspired. I hope this year's been a great year for you. We have so many great things planned ahead. For many of you, if you're interested in this Bible, we're actually giving it away. And so if you're interested in getting your own copy of this Bible and you haven't registered for Q 2018, April 11th to 13th, then I'm going to encourage you to register before the end of the year. If you register by December 31st at qideas.org/2018, we're sending you several gifts that our team came together, we curated, which include this Bible. Also includes a field guide to Nashville. We have our partners over at Fashionable created a passport black leather wallet that we're going to send you. Our friends at Thistle Farms have a couple of candles. We're going to send you one of those candles for you to enjoy. And all in all, we're just going to put this set of gifts together. We're going to send it to you if you register 2 or more people by December 31st. And let me tell you, Q 2018 is just shaping up like it does every year to be another amazing few days of conversation, of you interacting with leaders right now, the thought leaders, the change makers, the people making a difference, thinking about the conversations that we're all having with our kids, with our friends, in our churches, as we look at the year ahead and say, what does it mean to be a faithful Christian in 2018? What does that look like given the dynamics? Given the dynamics, the skepticism towards faith, towards Christians, as we talk about the divisiveness in our cultures, we talk about sexual harassment, and we think about race relationships. All of these things, it all happens at Q 2018. We get into it, no topics left uncovered, and we don't mind kind of turning it up a little bit and making each of us uncomfortable as we try to wrestle through what does it look like to follow Jesus in the midst of these kinds of conversations. Because let me tell you, as we think about our friends in the next generation, as I think about my children, it's important that we as leaders are leading, that we're leaning into these conversations, that we're learning, but we're learning how to help shape our churches to be thinking about these things, our youth groups, those in the next generation who are having to wrestle with how are they going to talk about their faith? Is this a faith to be proud of? And if they are, why? There's a lot of learning that all of us need to do, but more than that, we need to be encouraged. And when we come together in a place like Nashville, April 11th through 13th, you leave filled up. You're encouraged because you see that you're not alone, that there's a lot of other leaders committed to being faithful, committed to living this out, to passing this on to the next generation, our faith and our heritage, but also committed to loving our neighbors really well and not just creating a religion that's about us, but something that actually serves our cities, our communities, that leads to flourishing for all people. And if that's the kind of conversation you want to be having and you want to engage in, then you need to join us in Nashville, April 11th through 13th. So go to qideas.org/2018, learn more about that, see some of the topics that we've already confirmed. There's many, many more to come, and we can't wait to see you. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to continuing the conversation and the learning together.